Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today, my guest is Norabell Dechant, who is an integrative health professional who is here today to talk to us about sound bath healing. I went to one of Norabell's sound bath healings and I've been to two others, and they are magical, so profound, so moving. And so, if you haven't experienced one, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. Norabell talks to us about what is a sound bath, what the typical arc of a sound bath is, what you're going to experience, and so much more. If you're listening to this, I would encourage you to hop onto the video platform instead of doing audio only, because she takes us through so many fun instruments. And so we get a little chance to see and hear them, such as the shamanic drum, the ocean drum, metal chimes, bells, tuning forks, and so much more. This is such a fun podcast. I love sound bath healings. I hope you'll enjoy this episode. If you do, please take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. So much gratitude if you leave a comment or a review. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Nora. Welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Nikki.
I'm excited to have you because today we're going to talk about sound healing. And I was fortunate enough to experience one of your sound healings before, and I've only had two. And I talked to you about this before where they were vastly different. One was outside in Colorado amongst the aspen trees. And it was two practitioners playing the crystal singing bowls on either side. And I think there was a gong and a little bit of an ocean drum. And then the one with you was in a ceremony space. So it was an enclosed space. It was more intimate. And you played a lot of different instruments. And so for people that have never experienced a sound bath or a sound healing, what is that? And how is it different than going to the symphony, or is it the same?
Oh, those are great questions. Thanks so much for that piece. So sound baths are a space where you really have an opportunity to relax and invite in the three types of sound that resonate with you on a cellular level. And by cellular level, I mean both your subtle body, which is your inner energy body, as well as your physical body. And so is it similar to an orchestra? Yes, in the sense that orchestra has stringed instruments and drums and bells and chimes and things like this, which those are all considered nonlinear sounds. So what those frequencies do is they break up energy, they energize and activate and free any blockages in your physical or energetic body, but much different than it would for a sound bath. A sound bath is more along the goal of relaxation and healing. So the instruments are different. There are still percussion instruments, stringed instruments, but rather than having a cello or a violin, we're going to have a harp or an acoustic guitar, or even older instruments like a lira or an oud. And then when it's a sound bath, we're really focused on integration. So we're going to incorporate the three types of sound. So the nonlinear, as I mentioned, is percussion. Linear is going to be like voice, wind, so like flutes, and then the string instruments. And then pure tone is going to be tuning forks, man-made instruments, things that actually bring you back into the remembrance of vibrating, right? And all of the goals with these particular types of instruments is healing on a cellular level. If you think about manifestations of the divine throughout time, they come in with a sacred instrument. When I'm working with these instruments, I treat them as such. And I want to move the energy with that intention. So for me, activating the energy and breaking it free, and then harmonizing it in a way that calms the system, and then reminding the system like, hey, it's okay to vibrate. Like, that's what you're designed to do. So yeah, the goal of a sound bath is to balance and harmonize.
Yeah. I was thinking of that experience. I think that everybody that's ever been to a symphony has, where you're like, the music's playing and you're really calm and chill and relaxed. And all of a sudden there's like this intense sound that kind of jars you and makes you jump out of your seat a little bit. It happens often. And that would not happen in a sound bath or a sound healing, right?
I don't want to say that it doesn't happen.
Hmm. Not ideal.
And in a perfect sound bath, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But just like in any scenario, we set instruments down, we're walking around. Some practitioners play instruments very gently and very consciously, and other practitioners are more like, here, let's just bang things around, so it just really kind of depends on how in tune your
Hmm.
sound bath practitioner is as well, and whether or not they structure it in the matter that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Hmm. So, what would be like a beautiful arc for the typical sound healing experience? So I know everyone does it a little bit differently, but I know that there's probably common threads throughout different experiences. And so, could you share a little bit about how the beginning of the music is, and then the arc, and then how it ends, and how people are feeling during that process as it arcs, and then as it goes down at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically we start off with a mantra together just so that we can really tune in. So that's usually in combination with a harmonium. So it's a little bit more actively engaged.
Hmm.
From there, we move into inviting you really to melt into the floor, get into the space. So it's with voice, guided meditation, breath work. And then I myself personally, I say we because I tend to have my daughter work with me or another bath practitioner. But for me, I really enjoy starting off with bells
Hmm.
and calling in the intentions of the energies that we want to be there, and then move into drums. So we can, with the percussion, kind of stir things up, get it moving. Also, that allows me to anchor in the four directions, calling in, holding a safe container. I should say six because it's the four directions plus above and below.
Hmm.
And then from there, I tend to work the gongs because the gongs really are an astral projection. So it's getting you out of your body, out into the universe. And it also can be something that really does stir up
Hmm.
unexpected things. So
Hmm.
we stir it up, we get it moving. And
Hmm.
then we come in with an ocean drum, or I'll go over each individual person with the ocean drum and just
Hmm.
really break up anything that's remaining before taking you into a deep theta with the
Hmm.
crystal bowls. So the crystal bowls really have the capacity to any other thoughts that are remaining after the drums, the bells, the gongs. That's it. There's no more. The chatter is going
Hmm.
to stop and you're going to really be able to just be present with the frequency.
Yeah.
So then from the crystal bowls, we move back into a gentle chime where it's like rain stick, and I have metal chimes, and I have koshi chimes, so the elemental chimes that are just very gentle and soft and calm all of the energies that were stirred up through the other processes.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then from there, um, I tend to enjoy, again, a guided visualization, some breath work, and silence. I invite them
Hmm.
just to just be and become fully relaxed and taking a minute to just really be present. So that's
Hmm.
kind of how that ebbs and flows. And then we will invite, again, a closing song, one that's really grounded with a stringed instrument. So really like that to be guitar or something along those lines. And yeah, that's how it
Hmm.
flows. So
So I'm guessing every practitioner has a different way of doing it. But what I'm hearing from the overall arc is that everyone comes in and they've got different energies and they're a little bit scattered. And so it's calling in the directions and calling in protection, and then kind of getting people grounded a little bit in their body with a meditation or some kind of practice to just get them out of their head into their body. And then there's this like soft, gentle movement with the sound that gets to be a little bit more intense, to break up and like agitate, and not even necessarily agitate, but like to move energy and stir energy up.
Mhm.
And then it seems like there's this like releasing of that energy, and then it calms down. There's this soothing space, where you move more into relaxation and being fully in your body out of your head. And then it sounds like to me at the end, you want to ground people back into their body and back into the space and back into themselves, because they go from this like airy place of peace and they can keep that, but then they need to ground back in their body so that they can drive and function. Is that a decent summary?
that is a decent summary. And how I like to look at it is the 5 phases. So
Mm-hmm.
it's neutralizing, opening, breaking, focusing, and then integrating. So one of the
Yeah.
pieces that I left out of that was the tuning forks. So the
Mm-hmm.
tuning forks at the end, because that is the pure tone, that is telling the body, okay, we broke free all these things. It's moved out of the tissue. This trauma can now soften and remember to vibrate again. So it's now safe after we've moved it to vibrate again. And that's what the pure
Mm-hmm.
tone or a man-made instrument will really do for the closing of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the integration piece, along with the like returning, being present, feeling your body, rotating your wrists and ankles. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's definitely very intentional structure to
Mm-hmm.
how I like to operate.
All right. Okay. And so tell me a little bit about how you open and close the space, meaning how do you prepare the space so that it's ready to receive people? And then how do you like open that energy, and then when they're gone, clear out the energy? And also, what is the process of bringing people into the space?
Okay. Yeah. So, how I like to open a space is I actually like to circle the outside with an intention and prayer. Sometimes that'll include an offering to the land, right? Whether it's pine needles with flowers or, salt or cornmeal or whatever. So that's the outside. And then the inside of the container, I tend to like to use my crystal. I have a crystal wand.
Mm-hmm.
I like to use my crystal wand to open a spiral in the middle of the
Mm-hmm.
room where people are going to be participating. And then the portal that I open allows Mother Earth to really take any energies that people are bringing in and transmute it.
Mm-hmm.
I then open with sage and followed by sage, Palo Santos, or sweetgrass, because I want the higher frequencies to also be invited into the space.
Mm-hmm.
So we have protection, clearing, and then anchoring.
And talk about the difference between sage and palo santo and sweetgrass, because they're used for different things.
They are used for different things. So sage is actually antibacterial, antiviral. It literally wards off evil spirits. And so that is more of a clearing energy, right? The essence of
Mm-hmm.
that plant. The Palo Santos is a sacred wood. And it's more of kind of when you burn it, the wood actually becomes resonance. Am I saying that right? It creates
Mm-hmm.
a resin.
Yeah.
Linguistics, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. That particular energy is more protective.
Mhm.
And so it creates a shield by its essence. Whereas the
Mhm.
sweetgrass is more of ancestral and connected to Mother Earth. It invites in the ancestors.
Mhm. And then before, you were talking about before people leave and they wrap up and they go home, there are some different ways to ground people. So I'd love for you to share those ways that you ground people before they leave and drive, and then also how you clear the space, or if the space needs clearing once everybody leaves.
Yes, those are great questions. So I do also clear each individual person upon coming in with a
Mhm.
sage. But at the end of the sound bath, it's really guiding them back in. If there's a familiar song, we really like to remind people like, hey, you're here on earth. earth my body, water my blood, like,
Mhm.
that kind of really setting the tone for, oh, hey, you're human. And then
Mhm.
inviting them to drink water or tea or have a little grounding snack afterwards. Or I invite them while they're still barefoot, if it's nice outside, to go outside and just ground and walk for a few minutes. Yeah.
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 And so different people are going to have different experiences when going to a sound healing. And it could be that same person goes to 10 sound healings and has 10 different experiences. So I would love for you to share what some of the things are that might come up for people. I shared this before, but the one that I went to, it was like pure bliss and pure oneness and pure peace, and I felt like I didn't have a body, and it felt like the tones of the singing bowl were moving through my body, and my body was part of the earth and nature, and it was an absolute sense of oneness. But I also have experienced, agitation or frustration or thoughts and memories that come up. So, what are some of the different experiences that people might have?
Well, they might have what you've experienced, or they might also have a memory that they weren't expecting to come up. And that can be either positive or negative. That's kind of the
Mhm.
beautiful thing about it too, is it's not always one way or the other. Um, I like to incorporate a lot of inner child energy into my sound baths as well. So I play nursery rhymes or familiar childhood tones that will
Mm.
activate that inner child. And for some people, their childhood was traumatic. And
Mhm.
so some memories can come up and move. Memories that they might not have to process emotionally, they might just process physically or vice versa. So there is absolutely that possibility. And also, it really does kind of depend on so many things, right? Like if you're outside and you have two practitioners with crystal bowls on either side of you, for me personally, when I have a second practitioner and we're both playing crystal bowls, that is the most blissful, harmonic, transformative experience that
Mhm.
both the practitioner as well as the recipients can have. And I've
Mhm.
had sound baths outside and sound baths inside. Um,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
typically, the reason why they come back over and over again is because
Mhm.
no two experiences are the same. No two healing layers are the same. So I think that's the intrigue about it.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
it does have potential to bring up some emotions, some feelings, some memories, some sensations. It has a whole gamut of things that it can bring up inside for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, when we think about the human, the issues are in the tissues. Okay. So the tissues I refer to as the myofascial system.
Mhm.
And this is like a crystalline water structure that has the capacity to create adhesions and pull and store things.
Mhm.
If you get hit somewhere, that creates a memory. And
Mhm.
so, really, the importance of identifying, like, okay, was this physical? Did I get hit here? And then, on top of this injury, that now I have this open wound, I then stored all of my emotions that didn't
Mhm.
get properly processed in this spot. You know, when the instrument and the intention is set, it can really pull all those things and have a somatic experience. So it is important to remember these are patterns that get trapped. And what
Mhm.
we're doing is moving the patterns in the tissue that's trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I would love for you to share again the three different types of sound and what goes into each, like more specifically, what goes into each category again.
yes. So we have the three phases, which are nonlinear, which are percussion instruments, which is the activating and breaking free of blocks. Then we
Mhm.
have the linear, which is like wind, voice, string.
Mhm.
The linear tends to organize, balance, and harmonize because each overtone that makes up each note has a consistent pattern. And these help the block tissues remember its inherent movement, balancing and
Mhm.
harmonizing. And then the pure
Mhm.
tone, being that one frequency, it's good for signaling a body to a clear, concise sound memory, that it's okay to remember to vibrate and move freely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to go through some of these instruments. I know you
Mhm.
have so many. We're not going to go through them all. So I would love to start with the drums. And today we're doing the hand drum, right?
Yeah, so actually I start with the bells.
Oh, that's
Um,
right.
the
To open it
bells,
up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because the bells really, so when I speak about the instruments on a spiritual level,
Mm-hmm.
so the bells are about um breaking curses and demonic energy. So that's the reason why I like to start with the
Mm-hmm.
bells.
It makes me think of India because I spent a year in India, and everywhere you go before any ceremony, there's just a lot of bells going, and a lot of like anywhere in the city you can hear these bells going. And so yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, and this particular bell is from India, and it's an elephant bell. So this
Can
is,
you bring it a little tiny closer?
yep. So this bell is actually the communication pathway. So the elephant's antenna understands this tone, and
Mm.
you can train an elephant or calling Ganesh. That's what I like to do with it, with this particular bell. Versus, I have another little handbell, which is also from Tibet. But this is more about calling in the angelic forces. The Buddha, calling in the Buddha,
Mm-hmm.
and inviting the Buddha to clear any negative energy. So, so that's how I start. And then the difference between the two drums, I myself personally, I'm pretty,
That's
um,
beautiful.
I'm pretty
It's
partial to my drum.
yeah, it's gorgeous.
It's got both my spirit animals and then plus the
Mm-hmm.
flower of life. It's not warmed up right now, so it sounds a little tingy. When it's warmed up, it's more bassy, right?
Mm-hmm.
To warm it
And
up,
that's the problem with the real animal hides because I have one as well, and sometimes they dry out, and sometimes they have too much moisture, and if they have too much moisture, they kind of like are duddy.
yeah, they're dull and like,
They're dull, and then and if they're too dry, then they're tingy. And so I find I'm always like adding water to ours because it's so dry in Colorado. But they are finicky, and they don't like to be in extreme weather either.
yeah, totally. So what I like to do is I like to take just enough water to just cover the surface, and then I
Mm-hmm.
set it in front of a fire and
Mm-hmm.
warm it up. Like that's ideal how to warm up your drum, because then
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get too wet and it doesn't get too um it's not too cold. Like when if it's cold in Colorado and the water dries up and it's cold, then you're
Mm-hmm.
still gonna
It
have
gets
to
colder.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
what I love about an actual animal hide is you're bringing in the essence of that animal.
Mhm.
Like this is still, it still has the memory of the animal, right?
Mhm.
So I personally like really love that attribute of it. And then I have a synthetic buffalo hide drum, which I think is probably similar to yours. Um, so
Mhm. Can you play that a little harder and a little longer just for a sec?
you definitely have that bassy,
Mhm.
deep tone frequency, which this one, especially with the size, this is a 22-inch drum.
Mhm.
Um, I can move some serious energy.
Mhm. And being synthetic, you don't have to worry about temperature changes. It's always going to sound the same no matter where you are.
Exactly. But what I don't like about it is to me it does
Mhm.
sound fake.
Mhm.
It sounds synthetic. You can see on the back side of it that it's shiny and it's
Oh,
synthetic,
okay.
you know?
Mhm.
I have yet to master um the temperature gauge on the drums, which is why I always have a backup.
Yeah. Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and then what makes a drum a shamanic drum? I think we had talked about a little bit before about a hand drum like that you and I have is a shamanic tool and a shamanic instrument, but what makes it so?
Oh, um, honestly, I think that all these instruments are a shamanic tool.
Mhm.
Um, I think that what makes a drum like a shamanic beat versus a trance beat,
Right.
is the intention of the practitioner. So
Mhm.
if you're drumming to more of a fast-paced, like, um, shamanic intention of clearing the energy, that's
Mhm.
how the drum's gonna show up. If
Mhm.
you are playing the drum of more like, I just want you to feel the heartbeat of Mother Earth, that's how the drum's gonna show up.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the drum as a tool, as an instrument, is used for shamanic purposes.
Yeah.
Primary goal, I feel like, is what are you doing? Are you going on a deep dive journey? Or are you simply breaking free energy? Or are you bringing grounding? So
Mhm.
it is all about intention.
Yeah. And there is a certain pace of a shamanic drum, and you keep that pace pretty steady where people are able to shamanic journey and go into that theta state just by drumming, which
Yeah,
is not a lot of instruments can do that for people.
that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I found for me, like the drum is one of the best instruments for like bringing energy up, shaking it up, and then turning solid into liquid, almost like breaking up what's there and then moving it and allowing it to flow out. I feel like it's such an amazing tool for that.
yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you play the oceanic drum? Am I saying that right?
The ocean drum.
The ocean drum. I'm gonna make it fancier.
All right. It's actually what it sounded like outside of my window last night.
Was it raining?
The wind was blowing, and the way that the wind was blowing, it sounded like an ocean
Oh my
outside my
gosh.
window. But yeah, so were you able to hear it?
Yes, perfect. And so tell us about the purpose behind that usually.
Um, well, it depends. Again, you can have different tones of an ocean drum.
Mhm.
You can have more of a soft percussion, which sounds more like being in the womb of your mother. Or
Mm.
you can have, which this particular ocean drum has that hard outer shell versus a soft outer shell. So this particular one's going to sound more like you're in the middle of the ocean and in a hurricane, right?
Mm.
So this one is really my intention when I play it is about washing, removing any additional stuck energy. Like this, I will literally, like an ocean wave,
Mhm.
play it over the individual and then at the head, dump it.
Mm. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you played it in our ceremony. It was interesting. People's feedback at the end was most people loved it. And there was me and one other person that I was like, oh, I might make it stop. But you had talked about the intention at that point when you used it was to like scrub the energy. Like there was a lot of stuff in the room and it was like scrubbing the energy out. So that like agitation that I was feeling was like, it makes sense when you talk about the intention behind what you were doing. Um, but it was interesting how sound can like bring up different things for different people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
All
even
right.
past life memories. Like it can even trigger things where people are like, "Oh my
Mm,
gosh, I transported back to Egypt." Like
mm,
one of my favorite instruments is my cistern. So this is a Hathor instrument from Egypt, and
mm,
this is said to bring the essence of Isis into the ceremony. That's why they would use this. This particular instrument can only be combined with the voice or it has to be a solo instrument. That's the sacredness of that particular one. And for some people they're like, oh, that's so annoying. you know like what even is
mhm.
that? For other people they're like, I had a vision of Isis, so yeah,
Oh my
everybody
gosh.
is just so different.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And then what about, I know you have a gong, which isn't here because you've got so many ceremonies that you're doing this week.
Yeah.
But talk about the gong because I had shared with you that the one sound feeling that I went to outside, as incredible and as amazing as it was, at one point, and maybe I was a little too close to the gong, I'm thinking, but they hit the gong and it jarred me for sure. It had a really beautiful sound. It was very resonant, even outside, it just echoed. Um, but it took me out of my space pretty intensely, pretty quickly, and I'm sure that wasn't their intention, and I might have been a little bit too close. But yeah, what can you share about the gong?
So the gong, just like a drum, just like the singing bowls, it has the capacity to break free
Mm,
stuck energy. It's a percussion instrument, which means that it's in that initial phase of sound introduction, um, that can, in fact, pull you from a deep relaxation back into your body. Um, that's why I tend to like to open with the gong. I don't ever close with the gong
I would have
because,
preferred that. Yep.
yep,
Hmm.
no, it is one of those things that it is important to have those peaks and valleys
Hmm.
so that people are going on an actual journey. And if you're taking them on this super deep relaxation mission for the end goal,
Hmm.
the last thing you want to do is close with a gong.
Yeah.
Or even if you're like crystal bowls and then gongs, like I've tried that. Like I've created a storm
Hmm.
where I'm literally playing everything. What I found is when I created a storm, if I didn't do it in the beginning,
Hmm.
people left there really agitated. And so it is,
Hmm.
as a sound practitioner coming into this experience, if somebody is interested, I definitely encourage not to do that.
Yeah.
Not
And I
to,
guess there's always different ways of playing it, right? You can gently work the gong, or you can like boing, you can bang it, and it's really intense. And I think what you're saying makes sense. I would have preferred it in the beginning. It was after, a really long healing with the two sets of the crystal bowls, and it felt really jarring, and there was no entry into it. It just kind of all of a sudden there was the gong. I mean, I just jumped. Which I know is not probably what they wanted.
yeah. That's really
Yeah.
important though, to like play the instruments mindfully too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Read your audience, learn from your audience.
well, yeah, and know your instrument, right? Like
Yeah.
know what it's going to do. So I start my gongs off very gently. I have
Mhm.
two of them. I have a big cosmic gong that has a Sri
Mhm.
yantra, and then I have a full moon gong, which
Mhm.
is my smaller gong. I always start with my full moon gong because it's the energy of the full moon. It's going to activate the water in you.
Mhm.
So, and I will do that for a short time before I ever move into my bigger gong
Yeah.
because I want them to be activated and calm enough that when I activate the big gong, they can go astral, right?
Yeah.
And then once they're astral, then I play some of my friction. I use some of my friction tools to bring in like sounds of the dolphins. Really sounds like, but not just any dolphins. They're like intergalactic dolphins.
Mhm.
So if you invite the ease with the percussion instruments, they can be very gentle and nurturing.
What about the Singha? Do you have that?
I do. Yeah.
And when would you use that? I imagine that would be one of those nice ones in the beginning.
In the very beginning, this is how I call in the divine. And if I have a partner to do the sound bath, I even will go and do this on each side of the participants' ears. So they get the energy of both chimes. But yeah, this is really about invoking the gods.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And you can play 10 different Singhas and they all sound different.
very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and each one of them has, like this one has a Sanskrit prayer.
Mhm.
So and then some of them don't have any prayer. They're just
Yeah.
solid. So I also think that not only does the size matter, but also the creation of it. So
Mhm. Mhm. Size matters.
size matters.
Um, so let's talk about the Tibetan singing bowl. I think it's very different than the crystal singing bowls, the metal ones. And so when might someone use a crystal versus a metal? Is that so important? Is it just preference?
I do think it's important. Um, I feel like playing the metal instruments together creates coherence, right? Just like playing the crystal pyramid with a crystal bowl creates resonance, it creates coherence. Whereas, let's take the crystal bowl and then the Tibetan bowl together, even, they're just totally different resonance.
Mhm.
I actually thought that this particular bowl was one of the stand-up bowls. See the feet
Mhm.
that you can have them stand in it, and then you can
Oh,
vibrate their whole body. And I got it, and it's literally just for babies,
it looks like it's for babies. Yeah, little baby feet.
little baby feet, which I work with a lot of
Uh-huh.
babies, so it's very appropriate.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but yeah, so obviously you can hear the difference in the tone.
Mhm.
This one can invite the same brain wave
Mhm.
to activate, but my experience has been I can go so much deeper with crystal than I can with metal.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have probably like 5 or 6 metal singing bowls, Tibetan singing bowls. They all sound completely different, and I have one that doesn't even play. Like, I have all the different ones, and it doesn't work. So I
Yeah.
would encourage people before they buy something
Make
to
sure it
try them
works.
all out, because some of them sound amazing, some of them don't sound so good. They're pretty, but they don't sound as good, and I have one that every stick I have, it doesn't play well. So I think it's important to play them to see if they feel good for you.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
Mhm.
100%. I've had the same
Yeah.
experience with Tibetan bowls.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that I will say too about them is if you drop them, it's just like
Mhm.
any other instrument, they will lose
Mhm.
their tone. So that may
Yeah,
have
I had one
happened to your
crack.
little one.
It's almost like yeah, I had one break, and it almost like this inner layer, which I know it doesn't even have an inner layer, broke. It just didn't ever it wasn't ever the same. And you would think that they're indestructible because they're metal, but they are not.
They are definitely not.
Yeah.
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 They're not quite as
Yeah.
fragile as a crystal ball, however.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I'm on this Facebook page with people with the crystal sound healing, and people are in tears because their bowls are breaking. And I know that they have two different types of crystal bowls. They have the ones that are way heavier for people that aren't as mobile, but they're really difficult to transport, if not impossible. And then now they have lighter weight ones that are more transportable, but they are more fragile. And when you have a set break or a whole bunch of them break at one time, it's a huge investment to lose. It's devastating because you get attached to these instruments. And so, besides the transportability of the heavier ones versus the lighter ones, and maybe cost, because I know that the heavier ones are way more expensive. Is there any major differences?
So those are all great questions. So what I will say about it is actually the more expensive ones are the thinner ones, and they're
Interesting.
alchemical bowls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can get gold, you can get platinum, you can get
Mm-hmm.
obsidian, you can get these alchemical mixtures of bowls, and they can run like literally upwards of like $6,000-7,000 a bowl.
A bowl. My God.
Obviously, you don't want to travel with those unless you have a super, super good case, right?
Locks the extra cash in your pockets.
Yeah, that too. Insurance is maybe
Yeah.
considered, you know. I have been doing sound healings for over 2 years now,
Mhm.
and I have tried 3 different sets.
Mhm.
Um, Everywhere from paper thin to relatively thick, not impossibly thick, but relatively thick. So that's the one that I have currently, and they tend to be the
Mhm.
white frosted bowls are the thicker ones. Um, and obviously, because I do so many outside sound baths, my set was like $450.
Mhm.
Totally reasonable. But
Mhm.
if I have just one of them break, it's $200 to replace it.
Oh, because you're not getting the whole set?
Exactly.
Oh my
So,
God. So you're
yeah,
like, "I should just get an extra backup set."
yeah, totally.
Oh my
And
gosh.
not only that, but I've only had 2 bowls break on me in
Mhm.
2 years, which is really fantastic. I have the
Mhm.
padded cases, and I would tell any aspiring sound bath practitioner this. If you are going to make the investment in the equipment, make the investment in the transportation equipment as well. So,
Mhm.
like my gong, I have a massive gong case for it. Like
Mhm.
my even down to my drum, I have a case for my drum. Like if you're going to transport, treat your instruments as sacred and protect them.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you'll just keep investing in them. So, my ocean drum has tape on
Mhm.
it because it was outside, it got hot, it got picked up, and the person's handprints
Oh my gosh.
melted, you
Oh my
know. So,
gosh.
I mean, it happens. But,
Yeah, but I would
you
never
know,
think that that would happen. I would never even imagine that being a possibility.
I don't be either. So these are
Yeah.
like lessons you learn along the way. Like even my ocean drum's temperature is
Yeah.
important to consider. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so if somebody is interested, because I know I'm imagining people go to a sound healing, they fall in love with it, they maybe get a set of bowls, they start playing around with them, they start inviting friends, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gifted in this, and I want to offer this to people." And so, what advice would you have? Because I don't think that you necessarily need a whole plethora of instruments. That's nice to have that ability. Like a gong would be really big and expensive, but it's not necessary to have a beautiful experience. And so, what would be the minimum amount of things to buy, as opposed to like I'm thinking of a sound healing with a crystal bowl set.
yeah. So a sound healing with just a crystal bowl set can be really lovely. But again, you're only dealing with one of the phases of sound.
Hmm. But a
So,
little bell would be inexpensive and easy to add in.
yeah. So tuning forks are inexpensive, and you
Oh,
can
we didn't
add
talk
them
about the
in.
tuning fork.
Yeah. So let me do that then. Nice
Um, well, and I feel
segue.
like we could do a whole podcast about the benefits of the tuning fork because I think it is a sound instrument, but it's so much more. It's definitely a healing tool.
Yes. So a couple of ways that I like to use these, and I'll play them for you real quick. So literally like on each side of the ear pointed at each
Hmm.
other, so the
Hmm.
wave is
Hmm.
bouncing back and forth.
Can you do that one more time and hit them this way? Turn them this way.
You mean hit them in
Yeah.
like this? So the other way, I mean, there's actually 3 ways that I use these. So I first do that to attune the ears, attune the brain, and then clear the energy
Mm.
around the body. And actually, there is a 4th way. These aren't the particular ones that you can put on the body where they'll continue to vibrate after I activate them. But there are some tuning forks that the whole bottom piece is specifically designed to place on the body where the tissue is stuck.
Okay, that's the one I have, and it does make a beautiful sound as well. And then I use it to vibrate different parts of the body to activate or to energize or to move energy. So, what makes it different? Like if somebody's buying a tuning fork, how do they know which one they're buying?
Um, so the tuning forks that are really designed for the body, they have these round attachments at the top typically, and then the bottom half has either a rubber mallet or a longer extension. Um, and you can tell if you actually have the ability to have a hands-on experience with them before you purchase them, there
Mhm.
you definitely can discern.
So if somebody wanted to do the basic, they would have a bell, they would have the bowls, and then they would have a tuning fork.
Even more than that, I would say they could go as basic as the bowls, their voice, and then tuning forks.
Mm-hmm.
Or the bowls, a harp, and tuning forks.
Mm-hmm. And does the
Um,
tuning fork need to be an individual, everyone gets an individual experience with a tuning fork, or can you offer the tuning fork experience to everyone at the same time?
Personally, I think it should be an individual experience because you can hear the tone, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
room,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not as clear and concise as when you actually hold it up to their ears.
Okay.
It doesn't activate the energy the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important about what you said in the beginning about clearing the space, setting the intention, getting everybody kind of settled and on the same page. And then, at the end too, getting people back in their body, helping them ground, getting them, comfortable. And then I'm just curious if it's common for things to come up for people that they need to process after the sound healing, or are they usually able to integrate that experience on their own?
Um, I always offer integration.
Hmm.
So there are definitely those people where they're like, okay, that stirred up so much stuff for me. I need somebody to support me.
Hmm.
So I always, because I also offer energy work, craniosacral work, I always encourage people that if they need additional support to reach out.
Hmm.
And oftentimes because they're able to sleep so well after a sound bath, which is like, I always tell people, I can't promise you you're going to have the most magical, blissful experience, but I can promise you you're going to sleep good tonight, right? Like,
Hmm.
so,
Yeah.
so a lot of times the integration comes from the rest that they're able to get. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
I think this has only happened to me once in my life, but I did a shamanic journey with a drum to get myself into theta state. I did the shamanic journey. I came out of it and I was super ungrounded. I've never had this experience before. I was kind of like out of it, like a little bit dazed, a little bit confused. And they were encouraging me to eat root vegetables or meat or something heavy like that, to go outside barefoot and ground on the earth, to drink something. But it was the weirdest experience. It took me, I didn't even think this was possible, but it did. It took me, I would say, 6 to 7 hours to ground back into myself. It was the strangest experience. And unusual. And I'm just wondering if you ever have people really ungrounded after those experiences in the sound healing where they're not super connected to their body and they need a little bit more support.
Yes.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
are you a lot of air?
I'm super grounded typically. I'm probably one of the most grounded people I know, but I went somewhere and it was really strange. I was needing some support and it was just I felt just out of it all day, like I was in a daze.
You were in a
Um
trance. You were in a trance
yeah.
state. So
Yeah.
they didn't pull back in that pure tone and tell your body to start vibrating again.
Mhm.
That's why the phases of sound healing is so important.
Mhm.
Had they had done some sort of pure tone or even the next phase. So you can get
Mhm.
away with just doing the first two phases and still have coherence. But if you just do straight nonlinear, which is what that
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
then there's no reminding the
Mhm.
physical energy like, hey, it's okay to vibrate again. So,
Yeah. It was
you
the
know,
weirdest experience. I'm like one of the most grounded people I've ever met, and it was the strangest experience I've ever had.
yeah, well that would be why they didn't, and they also, I'm guessing,
Mhm.
probably didn't change the tone of the drumming.
No, because you go in, it's 20 minutes and you're in that theta, or I think it's 15 minutes. You stay in that theta state, and then the drum beat changes to bring you out of that state. So it's a consistent drum beat through the whole thing. And then it gets a little bit more sporadic and spread apart as you're coming out. And that's your call to come out and go back home. And I did all the right things where I followed my path back out. But I got caught somewhere.
Yeah. You didn't remember to vibrate again.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. It's just I didn't pull in that linear piece.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to do that.
So important to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we missed that would, for somebody that hasn't experienced this before? I would love for you to maybe share some of the benefits for the mind, for the body, for the soul, for ourselves. Like it's pretty much a treat. And so, what are the benefits?
So the benefits are obviously being able to move energy that otherwise felt unmovable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Breaking blocks in your physical or energetic body is number one goal, right? If you have trouble sleeping, sound healing is amazing for insomnia or people who can't get out of their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Stress, inflammation, pain, um, I mean, you name it. Like, I don't think there's a person on the planet, except for maybe a newborn baby, because they're already constantly in that brain wavelength, right? Who wouldn't benefit from a sound healing?
And I think that one of the greatest benefits is taking a beat from our life to get out of our head, to get in our body, to reconnect with ourselves. Anytime, any method that we can do in life to get us out of our brain, which never really has the answers, it's really, really busy,
Mhm.
provides benefit for all of us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, Norabell, thank you, thank you, thank you. How do
Thank you,
people reach
too.
you? How do they connect with you? What are some of the other things that you offer?
Sure. So, people can find me via my website or Facebook at pursuitofvitality.com. Um, I offer genshin, which is a Japanese form of acupressure, craniosacral reflexology, um, just custom energy work, private sound baths, aquatic sound baths, corporate events. Really, I do quite a bit within my practice, and I have a Fort Collins location and a Loveland location. For sound healings, obviously, I travel within a reasonable distance, unless, all expenses paid trip to Italy wouldn't be a bad idea, but,
Yeah.
putting that out there. I do once a month sound bath at the Star House. I'm also connected with Dom and Her and the Temples of Humankind in Italy, which is why I said that, because that's my
Mm,
bucket list where I'm playing next.
mm,
I work with their Boulder community and do their like solstice and their Taco Tuesdays. And then in Fort Collins, the warm water aquatic sound bath is next level magical because you're actually getting hands-on Watsu
mm.
while I'm in the water playing the instruments completely
Yes.
surrounding you. So the water having its own frequency capacity just
Yes.
amplifies the experience. So,
I think that would be such a gift to give to other people. Watsu is one of the most magical experiences I've ever had in my life. And to combine that with sound healing, like two incredible things at the same time, would be such a beautiful gift to give someone. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for sharing your magic and your sounds. And it was so great to connect with you, Norabell. I appreciate you.
Ditto. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.